after that?
Yeah.
La 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 la.
Do 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 da ba ba. Doobie boppy doobie boppa doo.
We're so naturally musical. It's insane. By the way, that looks super ominous. It looks like you've literally killed a giant chicken and got its lifeless head behind you.
I have.
It's like these
That's exactly what I did.
dark, like sunken eyes. That is the stuff of nightmares.
It is pretty
My
cool.
kids are terrified of it.
I'm not surprised. I'm terrified of it. Welcome to the Honest Designers Show, your transparent look into life as a modern designer. My name's Tom Ross, and I'm the founder at designcuts.com. And this week I'm joined by my fellow Brit and hand lettering expert, Ian Barnard, American retro design expert, Dustin Lee, and the ever-talented South African illustrator, Lisa Glantz. In this week's episode, we discuss how often the work of design becomes just work. Are you losing the initial passion for your design work because other stuff is taking over? Is it starting to feel like just a job? If so, then this is the episode for you. Let's get into it. So today we're talking about how design, like so many things, can become work. When you're doing it for a job, right, you can lose some of the passion, some of the love for it. And I've definitely felt this. I am guessing you guys probably have. And I'm guessing a lot of the listeners out there either have felt this or are starting to feel it or are going through it. So yeah, what are your guys' thoughts? Is this something that can be avoided or is it inevitable?
Personally, I think it's inevitable, which is probably a little negative.
Okay, so quick episode there. It's hopeless.
I think it's inevitable too. So this actually might be really short.
Okay,
Yeah.
Ian?
Yeah, I agree with the other two.
Oh, dear.
And that's a wrap.
Right, so Lisa, back to you then. The purveyor of doom. Why do you think it's inevitable?
Well, I think anything that you do often and regularly and daily, like the honeymoon phase is going to be over. Like whether it's a relationship, it's a new sport you take up, a musical instrument, learning to draw, designing. I think eventually after you do it over and over and over and over, and you kind of have a whole lot of experiences of doing it under your belt,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe you come across the same one that annoyed you initially, it starts becoming a little niggly, and then you kind of have to come across it again and again, and before you know it, it starts feeling like a chore, you know? So,
Okay, I'm going to push back though, because you haven't mentioned the work element there. You were just talking about doing it over a very long period. And surely, if you truly love it, like imagine for a sec, there's no clients, there's no money involved, you're just drawing or designing or creating because you love it.
Yeah.
Well, kind of what you're saying is that does become a chore, but surely if you love it just for the joy of doing it, it wouldn't.
I guess I'm assuming, I made an assumption, I guess, that eventually these things will become your occupation. But because I think with any work or any job, even as much as you love it, as much as it's fantastic to wake up every morning going to your job, there's going to be stuff that's going to be laborious and tedious. And I think those little those things that creep in that you have to do, that I think they kind of like start killing a little bit of the joy. And I think the key is to try and pull yourself back and remember why you loved it in the first place, and just realize that there are going to be spots in your process or your whatever you do that are going to not be so nice. And then there are going to be times that the stuff that you are doing is going to be, you know, amazing and awesome and exciting.
So I think it's fair to assume that the non-design stuff is what brings a lot of designers down and feels like the work. So when you're dealing with legal issues, or you're doing accounting, or maybe you're not a fan of marketing, but you have to learn how to do it anyway, difficult clients, all that kind of stuff, I think it's fair to assume that's going to be what kills the joy for a lot of people. But what about the actual creative work itself? Because I think people lose the joy of that as well. It's not just all the admin work; it's the actual creating that suffers when it's work as well.
Yeah, personally, I think then you have to, if that is happening, the one or two things are happening. There's either an underlying reason that is like creating that situation, or you really have fell out of love for design, which is quite weird. but I mean, I think the first one, often we think, oh, I'm sick of designing, but in actual fact, are you sure you're sick of designing, or are you sick of dealing with clients, and you're sick of dealing with somebody telling you what to do, and you're sick of, the admin that goes with it, or whatever.
But don't those tie together? Like, by definition, is someone a designer if they don't have clients? Like, clients are almost like you can't separate a client from being a designer. So that's part of it. And it's like, I do those daily drawings. I love doing the daily drawings. I'm not doing it for a client. Don't plan to ever do it for a client. No client would ever hire me to do it. But if I did have clients, it would really quickly become unpleasant because, then.
Yeah. So it's the other stuff that kills it, kind of thing.
Right. But it's fundamentally part of it.
I think it ebbs and flows. It can be, like you say, it can be sometimes really enjoyable and you love it and you can't get enough of it. And sometimes you can't think up ideas or you have to come up with an idea and you can't come up with an idea and you're struggling. But also, you might have a dream job come up where designing some packaging for your favorite pair of sneakers for Nike. But then, the person...
I was waiting for that.
But maybe the people you're dealing with on that project are just making it really hard work for you. Then that dream job becomes... Yeah, and you're having to go through your 10th round of revisions.
Oof.
That can sometimes I'm doing it again, and I'm actually no. It just sort of sometimes can zap the life out of what you did enjoy. So, but that's more of a job by job basis, I suppose. And you could have something that's quite boring, or you thought going into the job was quite boring, but the relationship with the client was really positive, and it made it more interesting than you thought it was going to be. Maybe they gave you free rein, or they sparked some ideas and you thought, oh, I'm really enjoying this. So, yes, it's a weird thing that it's not, I suppose you've got this central thing, which is your passion of doing design, and it's all the external influences that surround it can control how you feel about your main passion, I suppose.
So is it fair to say that design without purpose is art?
Well, it's a good quote, though.
Getting philosophical up in here. But no, seriously, design, if it's not for, for a specific purpose, intended outcome, is that simply art because you're just creating for the sake of creating?
But isn't that a purpose in itself?
Yeah. Well, I think so. I mean, I kind of think design in itself is really just like a cog in the wheel of capitalism. It's just it's purely a vehicle to sell people things that they don't primarily need and to make them desire things they don't need and actually make them miserable. I really truly believe that that's what design does.
Well, that's a ray of hope for all the listeners out there.
It's really going downhill.
You are a cog in a horrendous corporate machine.
People are going to push back on that, but and I mean, yeah, design can do good in the world. But I mean, I think that design probably came into being primarily as a vehicle to create desire and sell products that, for the most part, we don't need, or that we're not buying based on utility. We're buying on these false desires. Oh gosh, maybe we should edit this out.
Well, I mean,
no, I agree.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it that any commercial artist, and I use that term loosely, you can have an illustrator under that banner, you can have a hand letterer, a graphic designer. So any commercial artist is exactly that, a commercial artist. You're doing it to make money, to make money for your clients. I think we're deluded to think that you're not doing that.
Although there's sorry, there's a big difference, right, between I'm designing for this huge evil corporation versus I'm getting paid by my best friend to do her wedding invitations.
Sure.
Like both
Yeah.
are commercial,
yes.
but one is a lot more dystopian than the other.
But then that goes with that whole discussion we had about, you're choosing the jobs based on your moral values, So yeah, it depends on how strongly you feel about that kind of stuff. But I think, well, going back to the topic that we actually started talking about, I think it's I personally, I'm obviously have to speak from a personal point of view, but I think the times that I have lost the fire or the interest or the desire to either design or illustrate, it's because of other factors. It's been very seldom, I just don't feel like designing today. It's always been because I'm too tired, or I've got too much on my plate, or I've just overworked or whatever. It's very seldom do I wake up and go, I really don't want to draw today. I don't know. I've just never had that feeling, but I have felt, damn, I don't want to do this project. I'm just so tired.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So maybe the art side of it, the only thing that would be a friction would be more internal, because it's great that you don't have that, but I know there are some artists where they have creative block, or they get super frustrated or be like, I'm banging my head against the wall, I just don't feel like painting today or drawing or creating. So I guess what I'm saying is the art side of things is that internal block, but the design side is the external blocks of clients and external forces that are kind of more outside of our control. So if we're thinking in terms of design work, for most people listening, it's going to be those external factors which are killing the joy for them rather than anything internal. But weirdly, it feels internal because you start questioning yourself and why am I really doing this and am I really passionate? So you start internalizing all these external pressures and forces, which is wrong.
Yeah, it is. And I must say, I really struggled when I first started illustrating, and I also went through a phase where, like every day I felt like I still feel this way often, but it's not as much. But every day I felt like I'd won the lotto. It was like amazing. It was a dream come true. But then reality starts creeping in. Like you got to make a living. So there's a little bit of a hamster wheel thing happening where you feel like you got to keep on it. So it's again, I guess what you were saying, Dustin. There's like, it's got to do with like, the world revolves around money. So often that has an influence, and it's sad, but it's true. It has an influence on your artistic expression, because when you're under pressure, whether it's from a client or trying to earn a living or putting out your next product or whatever, it kind of starts killing that original passion that you had when you first started. So it's important to always put perspective on the situation. It's hard though, but you have to, because if you don't, eventually you start just creating for the sake of making money. And I mean, people sniff that out, and before you know it, it's like a downward spiral. They stop buying your products, or your clients stop coming to you because there's no more magic or joy in your work. And then it's like you get more desperate, and it's just, it's quite a weird battle, I guess.
Would you say that constraint is the issue here? Feeling constrained, and that could come in a lot of forms. It could be that your time is constrained because you're feeling the pressure for a deadline. It could be that your creativity is constrained because a client is getting you to do work you don't really want to be doing, or shifting you away from your true creative expression. It could be that you're constrained from doing the stuff you love because you've got the tax and account side of things, or whatever it might be, or the legal side of things. So I think if you've got the unbounded kind of freedom to express yourself creatively, that's where the joy comes from. And I really think it's like anything we could cite which kills that buzz for you is technically a constraint of some kind, whether it's on your creativity or your time or your headspace or whatever.
I mean, I feel, especially near the end of my graphic design freelance business, I felt trapped. I felt like I couldn't go anywhere creatively. I had to do things a certain way to make a living. So you kind of feel like you're constrained to everybody else, and you could never really fully express yourself. And obviously you can, I guess, work towards not feeling that way. But yeah, my answer to that was get out of it. But, not everybody wants to do that, to actually do that. But yeah, it is. I guess it's that feeling of feeling trapped. It kills it.
I guess it depends too on like what you like enjoy about it. Because I know some designers who they're real people persons. Well, that's how you say it. And they love making people happy. And I mean, I think most people love making people happy. You know what I mean? Like they're very social people, and the design is almost a secondary thing that they're good at, but they just love people. And some of them, their favorite part is working with customers and listening to the feedback and just getting them what that person wants. And for those people, I think it's really enjoyable to do that. I just think for a lot of designers, they're people that originally fell in love with art and now have found a way to make money from art, which is through design, but it comes with a very high price tag.
Can I just say for a sec, Dustin, that's kind of me you're describing. Like, I love the community. I love making people happy, making the customers happy. Still feels like work. Still kills the joy of it at points. Like, all the people being like, when you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Like,
no.
That is such nonsense.
Yeah.
Like, I'm as an aside, I'm actually working on like a short movie at the minute, which is talking about this amongst other issues, where it's just a huge misconception. Because I think people beat themselves up, where it's like, oh no, I'm feeling a little bit joyless at points, or I'm not on 110% form every single day with what I'm creating, but everyone's telling me I should be. So am I a fraud and I'm not a true designer if I don't love it every single day? It's like, no, it's
maybe
normal.
That's the problem, is that there's this like mistaken assumption that you should love every second of something you're doing, and if you don't, something is wrong, and that's a symptom. And I think the reality is, I can't even think of anyone in my life who's been in any job where they love every minute of it. It's just not who we are. Like, we weren't meant to be like that.
That's like saying every single second of a marriage should be joy-filled and never anything bad. Otherwise, you should get divorced. Like, that makes no sense.
There'd be no married couple.
Yeah,
exactly.
Apart from the ones on Instagram.
Right.
Because I married my best friend and my angel.
Yes.
And we stood on a beach holding pina coladas.
That's the thing, though, right? Like, it's okay to not. I mean, this is such a cliche to say, but like, without like not being happy with things, how can you know happiness? It's such a cliche to say that, but it's kind of true, right? Like, that's just how it is. True.
Ain't no sunshine without the rain, my friend.
That's right.
Yeah, you can't. If you think about it, form is made up of shadow and light. So if you want it to exist, you need both sides. So yeah.
We should just continue this episode with as many metaphors for this as we can. I'll throw one more in. There's the yin and yang. You can't have the light, the little snake eating the other one in the yin and yang without the darkness.
Exactly.
This week on Honest Cliche Show.
Honest Cliches.
By the way, I'm pretty sure I murdered the quote there. I totally murdered the quote. I'm pretty sure it's "There's no rainbow without the rain," and I just said sunshine.
I try to remind myself of that. Like, I have this. This is for the people that are watching a video of it. Oh, I'm getting so old. My back.
Whoa.
I have this going, by the way, on Instagram, constantly, like, people are like, dude, your posts on your drawing thing are such a downer. Someone wrote me. I'm like, yeah, they are.
But someone messaged you saying you're a downer.
Yeah, they were like, can you please like be more positive? And I was like, oh, they have a point, but I was like, this is my Instagram. I'll be as negative as I choose. Anyways, like, I keep this goal because I'm like, I'm going to die someday.
Yeah.
Like, for real. Like, because like, I think I'm going to die someday, and maybe I shouldn't be in front of this computer. Every time I look at it, I think to myself, hey, maybe you should go play with your kids, guy.
I like that. Yes.
That is
good one.
That's a positive spin at the end, thankfully.
Yeah.
Do you want a little random fact here? This is one of the few things I remember from my English degree, and totally off topic. But there was an old English poet, I think it was English, called John Donne, and he basically he was obsessed by his own mortality and death. And so he got a doctor to wrap him up as they would do a corpse, and got photographed and then carried it in like a pendant around. So he'd constantly look in this pendant and see the dead version of himself as a reminder of his own mortality. Quirky guy, and he'd also sleep every night under his bed in a coffin to remind him that he could die any moment.
That's so awesome.
So you're like the modern day John Dunn on Instagram.
Okay.
Well, okay, so one more thing to add to that. So they used to have when I think it was like either like, I believe it was when great soldiers came back from like wars in Roman times or whatever. I'm probably butchering this, but the general idea stands. They would have someone, as they came back, crowds would be cheering for them, and someone would walk behind them, literally being like, "You're going to die soon. Like someday you're going to die. Like you're not immortal." Like the whole person's job was to like remind this person, you're just like everybody else. Like don't like, like what's that saying, that the poppy that grows the tallest gets chopped? Like the whole thing was just to keep reminding them, like, this is just, you're not,
you're not great.
Yeah, like remember, like
you suck, just like everybody else. Yeah.
Anyways, I guess the whole point tying back to it was just, who said that being a designer was supposed to be like surfing, like like woo, this is awesome the whole time,
Yeah, it can be whatever you want it to be, and so if we're trying to look towards solutions here, like I think the bottom line is everyone goes through this. Realize you're going to have the bad days. You're going to feel disenfranchised with what you're doing. You're going to feel joyful at points with it, hopefully, but also very joyless at other points. But that's natural. You'd be getting that in a 9 to 5 anyway. Hopefully the highs are worth the lows. But can anything be done, if not to avoid it entirely, to kind of mitigate those less joy-filled times? I think maybe one obvious one, you might have some context on this, Lisa, is being more picky about your clients, looking for the ones that bring you more joy.
Yeah, if your clients are influencing a lot of that joylessness, then definitely. I know it's not always possible though, but if you're kind of stuck that you can't, you need to definitely make an effort to find other ways to do it. And even if it means, because that's what I started doing, I started focusing more on my stuff outside of my job that was as creative. I started making jewelry, I drew more, that kind of stuff. So even if you're not getting that creative outlet in your job, even though your job is supposed to be creative, definitely feed it in another way. I think you owe it to yourself, because you don't want to get to a point where you absolutely because I was determined not to have my creativity killed by crappy clients.
Because that's the asset, right? If that's gone, you don't have a career left. You have to protect that.
Yeah. So I you kind of have to keep that fire going. So do whatever you can to do that.
And I think if you surround yourselves with good clients, then you'll have a more positive outlook on the work that you do. And I think that you are in control, even if that's extreme to having to get maybe a part-time job working as a restaurant or something, as a waitress or waiter, so that then you can take on the better jobs. Otherwise you're going to be stuck in this. Because it can easily just drain you if you're coming in. I remember I was just I would sometimes come in and just, complain to my wife about a client who was just really bringing me down, and just how, it means you can't sleep, and you're worrying
What's
about
worth
it.
that?
That's terrible.
And it's worth, you have control. You have the ability to, get rid of that client and do something else. There's lots of ways. I think, we're very blessed in this current environment. There's so many ways that we can make an income that it's not just with client work. There's other ways of doing it. So,
you're right.
If there's a toxic client, then it's worth getting rid of it. And to the extreme of doing a non-design related thing, because that will help you with your design related other bits that you're doing. So, because I know that not everyone is in a good financial position and there's bills to pay. So it's thinking, okay, what can I do to stop myself going down that sort of rabbit hole of, even to depression of, it zapping and draining your creative energy because of, how that relationship with the client, especially when you're stuck. I know that if it's just one client, you don't take that client on again. But if you're stuck in a regular, like you've taken on like a yearly, you're doing a monthly magazine or something, or you're doing like Dustin and his website that went on for a year.
Oh yeah.
That's quite hard. So it's thinking, really hard about, okay, what can be done about this in the short term, so it doesn't affect me in the long term.
I would actually say to anyone who hasn't listened to it, go and listen to the recent episode we did about being more assertive with your clients, because that should definitely lead to more joy, and the work element kind of killing your joy less. And funny enough, I've heard from several people about that episode. It seemed to really resonate with people, including even we've been doing a bunch of phone interviews and stuff like that at Design Cuts, and several people now have actually said they already listened to the show and that episode stuck out to them if they're creative people. So
good.
If you haven't heard it, go have a listen. Hopefully it helps you guys out. I've just had an idea as well, so this is a shout out to my team because they kind of get these episodes ready for publication. But I know we want to start producing additional content to try and help people on the back of the episodes, and I think it would be cool to have a cheat sheet, little PDF, where quite often we hand out quizzes and questionnaires to our clients before a project. I think there should be such a thing as a PDF that you do yourself after a project's completed, where it's 5 questions and it just says, first one, how stressful was this project on a scale of 1 to 10? How much joy or enjoyment did you get from this project on a scale of 1 to 10? Name some things you liked about this project. Name some things you didn't like about this project. And then at the bottom, would you choose to work with this client again? And I think going through that right after you've completed a project would give a tremendous amount of self-awareness and would help steer you away from bad clients, stick with the right ones, but actually thinking about, well, hold on, what stressed me out? And maybe it's that it was a 9 out of 10 on stress, but also a 9 out of 10 on enjoyment, and you kind of thrived off all the pressure. And just actually stopping and thinking, why did that, stress me out so much? Like, what didn't I enjoy about it and what did I enjoy? And you should maybe start seeing patterns. I don't know. I think what do you guys think? Would that be a cool tool?
Yeah,
definitely.
It's actually because I was thinking, Ian, when you mentioned the depression thing, I didn't actually think people realize, because creatives go through phases, right? I mean, we're quite sensitive people, and I think we're pretty volatile. I could be wrong, but maybe.
What are you talking about, Lisa? We're not.
And I think we often don't always see the serious signs of when things are bringing you down, and you just think you're having a bad creative spree, if I can call it that. And when in actual fact, what could be happening is that you are slowly spiraling into depression, because I think when our creativity starts getting sapped and we start feeling, this sounds extreme, but like almost like vampire, like the people are feeding off us kind of thing, that we actually we can easily spiral into a depression slowly but surely without noticing it. And 2 years later, you look back and you think, my God, I hate my job. I hate what I do. But in actual fact, it's not the designing that you hate. It's the stuff that built up to it, and you're just being taken advantage of. So I think that exercise after each job, Tom, as you mentioned, is brilliant, because it kind of just keeps you in check.
You have to audit it, because as you're saying, you naturally assume it's the work. I don't know why, but because that's, I guess, what you're like, well, I'm a designer, so it must be the designing that's making me miserable.
Yes, we have to be stressed the whole time. And, it's got to be a terrible job because we're a designer. We just, we take it. And it doesn't have to be like that.
I don't know if you guys have found this. I definitely get anxiety with work at points. And for me, it's the thought of when there is a million things happening at once. Oh, and I feel like even contemplating tackling one of them, like the other million bear down on you and you feel overwhelmed. And it's incredibly freeing when you actually take action and kind of pull yourself out of that funk and that headspace and you're like, do something. And whether that's, okay, I'm going to start with that one small job, or whether it's, well, I'm going to push that deadline because it's arbitrary and I'm setting it for myself, whatever it might be, I think often the work begins to kill the joy. And a lot of that, yeah, maybe it comes from clients, but I think most of it probably is self-imposed, holding yourself to your own high standards, or
so true,
whatever it might be. And you become like a prisoner of your own head, right? Without getting too deep here. And the second you pull yourself out, or someone else pulls you out of it, your partner or whatever, and they're like, well, hold on, why can't you change that? Why can't you stop doing that? Why can't you do something different? And the second you do it, you're like, oh, wow, I could have done that the whole time. And it's like the biggest burden off, right?
I so agree with that. And it kind of ties into Ian's point about, oh my gosh, my brain just totally like reset itself to blank.
You got baby brain. It's all good, man. You got a newborn baby.
Oh, well, Ian's, thank you. Okay, somehow that helped. Ian had said, Ian had said that there's so many different ways to make a living online as a designer now, right? Like, I mean, you can make pillows for 3 months if you want and see how you do at that. You can, try your hand at hand lettering. I mean, there's just so many different things you can do.
Yep.
And it reminds me of one of my favorite actors is Daniel Day-Lewis, and he'll go do like a killer movie and then he'll be gone. And then one time he was gone and he was like studying, I think in France, being like a cobbler, like making shoes. Like he just decided to do that. And then like after a couple of years of doing that or something, he comes back and makes another movie, and then he disappears and I don't know, he's like doing something other totally random thing. Right. And I think what you're saying, Tom, makes so much sense that we tend to think, well, I'm a designer, therefore my options for getting out of this situation or improving my life are A, B, and C, and choose one of those doors, when the reality is there's so many other doors. You can do whatever you want. Like you can go serve popcorn at the movie theater for like 6 months if that's what you need. Like,
like we don't have a boss standing over us, screaming at us. And I mean, even if you did, like if your boss was terrible, you could quit, right? But there are options. We're not in like a war-torn country where we have no way out and we're just stuck in the system or whatever. Like literally you could be like, okay, one day I decided I hate web design, so I'm going to start doing illustration, and discover that's what I really love doing. And guess what? I want to go do it in Mexico or something. like I realize some people obviously have ties with family and so on, but what I'm getting at is that for all the freelancers out there listening in particular, it affords you a lot of freedom. And amidst all the pressure and the other stuff and the stuff that kills the joy of the work, often we forget those tremendous positives. They just become in the back of our mind or barely even acknowledged, when actually they should be in the front of our mind constantly, because we're probably part of 1% of the population that actually has those incredible benefits at their disposal.
Oh, yes.
And like you said, some people do. I mean, most people, it's like not realistic. You have family, kids, all sorts of things that hold you to what you're doing. But I think we grossly underestimate options we have.
Yeah. I think the box or the trap that you're in is often self-made. And even if you think it's not, and you think somebody kind of forced you into that corner, you let it happen. So I know that's all sounds very easy and simple, but the bottom line, that is the truth. And we're in control of our own future and decisions that we make and where we want to go in our lives. No one else is doing it for us. So
are we? Like, do you ever wonder that? Like, are we in control of it?
Are you talking philosophically, or are you talking
like, yeah.
Yeah, I think we are. Totally.
There you go, problem solved.
All right, case closed, philosophers.
Definitely.
Shall we maybe do a quick fire where we each just spit out a quick example of something that might be killing the joy for some of the listeners and a solution? So my example would be my client is making me miserable. It's like, okay, fire them, get a new client. And for all the listeners, I kind of want this to be oversimplified. Like we could dissect, and I'm not saying if your whole mortgage payment depends on this client, fire them immediately, but it would be go and
work towards
work towards that, exactly. But keeping it simple, that's my one. Who's next?
Yeah, I'll go. If you feel like your creativity is totally dried up, there's no more joy, I would say definitely find an external thing, whether it's either doing what you're doing but for yourself, like designing for friends or whatever, or take up a craft hobby. Try making baskets. I don't know. Try building candles or whatever. So something just as a creative outlet that you feel, that basically to get you back on track, because you got to fight for your creativity. You got to look after it,
as well as your right to party.
You got to fight for your right.
Yes.
No, I completely agree.
Yeah.
I think I'd say don't, just like you wouldn't bring your cup to your wife, I think I heard Will Smith say, or if you wouldn't bring your cup, you don't bring your cup to your design career and expect design to fill the cup with happiness. You don't go to your spouse and expect them to fill your cup with happiness. Like that's going to come from other things. And I'm not saying I know exactly what those things are, but I'm sure it's not, you don't fill your cup with joy you don't design yourself out of that situation. You've got to find it, I think, in your own self.
Yes.
Mr. Ian?
I like that.
What really, I've probably mentioned this before, what really helped me, because I really wasn't enjoying design for a while.
Sounds hilarious. Sorry. Edit that out. That was rude.
Dustin with his Tourette moment.
He's bearing his heart.
Funny.
Well, it's just funny because he said, sorry. Go ahead, Ian. I really want to hear what you have to say. I'm sorry. That's so rude.
Well, I can't continue now. I'm so cut up inside. I was really not enjoying design for a period of time, and what really helped me, I was like struggling to find out what I really loved. I just really couldn't. I was straight. It was like I could see all these things, and I just couldn't see which one of them I enjoyed or didn't enjoy, because it's sometimes hard. Like I said, it's sometimes hard because what I might have enjoyed was made unenjoyable by a client not being, the best they could be. And then you shoot that down. So what really helped me was to find out what I really didn't enjoy doing. Maybe make a list of all the things that you do, and then cross off the ones you think, actually, I don't really enjoy doing that. I'd rather not do any more of that. And it clears away all this like debris, so you can see what is the thing that really gets you fired up. And that really helped me to I suppose pursue, actually, I really love everything to do with letters. But it was only by getting rid of the web design, getting rid of the brochures, logos, business cards, whatever it may be, so I could see clearly that was it. And it was in combination with that, clearing out the sort of stuff that I wasn't enjoying, and picking up, like Lisa said, picking up a craft with calligraphy that it was at both those same times. So I was clearing my focus and just playing, really. The calligraphy was just me playing, just something off the computer. I had this time in the evening that I could just spend doing it. And that then branched back out into a career path for me. But it wouldn't have come out if it wasn't from doing those two things in the first place.
Yeah. It's like an audit.
Yeah. It was definitely like an audit. And I've been doing design for 14 years. And I was I was on that sort of treadmill of design.
It's never too late, kids.
Never too late.
Never too late. So true.
But I think it's easier now because you've got stuff like, online learning things where you can quickly have a go at something and try it. Just, allow yourself some time to just play, experiment. And it's amazing. You think, wow, I never knew, I knew of this, but I never knew how enjoyable it was. Or, and I think we don't often have enough. I think one of the combats to anxiety I was reading about this week was just going off and playing. As adults, we don't play like kids do.
Yeah.
We don't have that opportunity just to, like the example of the person in this book who was going through it was he went out and, caught a ball with his friend, a baseball, they just chucked it to each other. How often do we go and just kick a ball around in a park or, throw a ball or, silly. I was thinking, because it was been snowing in the UK, we went off to the park opposite our house and you could see all the parents wanting to have a go for the kids around there. And just being free just to, not worrying about what other people were thinking and just being a child, I suppose, what it would be.
I'm all for that. And I can tell when I'm a dad, I'm going to be the biggest child. Like a few years ago, I was a fully grown man and I went to the beach with my girlfriend and all the other couples our age were there, like pouting and taking Instagram pictures and sunbathing. And I decided to dig a hole in the sand, like a giant hole, and like play in that. And she was just there kind of looking on, despairing probably. And then I abandoned what I dug there, and suddenly all these kids ran over and just started like playing and making sandcastles in it. And it's like, yeah, that's what it's all about. Like,
exactly.
I hate being too adult. Okay, I would say another thing. So Ian there deviated away from his craft, got sick of brochure design and all the rest, and went and did lettering. I would say, and another solution we discussed is audit what is making you miserable. And it might not be the craft. Maybe it is some external stuff.
Yeah.
So as we discussed, maybe you're thinking, oh, I must hate illustration. It's really getting me down. It's like, oh, no, it's not. It's just the fact every illustration job I've been doing, I need to go and do 5 hours of work on my taxes or whatever. And I'm associating the feelings from that.
Exactly.
And it could be, the type of illustration work that people commission you for is not the stuff that you actually enjoy. So it's rebranding what sort of illustration work that you do. So it's like, okay, if it's really like with Lisa, if it's, I really love drawing bunnies, but I hate drawing, people, then you not alleviate. I mean, you emphasize the bunnies. You just go bunny mad. And
I'm really glad you said that, Ian, because that is probably a good point to end on, because next week we're going to be talking about exactly that. We're going to be talking about branding yourself and how you position yourself and your creativity and your skills for the world.
Yes.
So I'm going to leave the listeners on that bombshell. Hopefully this week helped with anyone feeling disenfranchised lately with their craft. There is definitely hope. You're not alone. We all go through it. And we will catch you next week. So thanks for tuning in. Bye from us.
Cheerio.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. We hope that it helped you to get some useful perspective on design becoming just work and what you can do about this. As always, you can find full show notes for this episode over at honestdesigners.com or find us over on iTunes by searching for The Honest Designers Show. If today's episode helped you, then it would mean so much to us if you took just a moment to leave us a quick review on iTunes, as this is one of the best ways for other designers to discover the show. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next week right here on The Honest Designers Show.